One thing I promise you is that every single good wedge player cares about one thing first and foremost before they even figure out what kind of shot they're going to hit, and that's the lie. So with different lies, and more importantly different levels of firm surface, means you're going to want to hit different shot types. So I'll give you an example of, if I'm on like hard pan, or I live in Arizona and it's summertime, so most of the time the fairways are kind of like concrete out here, using a lot of bounce is a lot of times not going to be your friend, because if you think about it, it's hard pan or it's like concrete, and the ball, when you hit it, it's going to want to bounce up, and that's where you might, skull a wedge across the green. So like if I'm on hard pan or things like that, then I kind of focus in on, I want to think about that leading edge, because I know the club is going to want to bounce off it in the first place. So I'm trying to keep the wedge down so I can hit the shot I want. And the opposite side of that is, like, say I'm playing a course and it's wintertime and it's really soft. Well, this leading edge, it wants to be a knife and dig, right? So if it's really soft, well, then I know that I want to use the bounce of the wedge, so that way I've got just forgiveness. If I'm a little bit fat even, it's going to bounce up, so I'm not going to chunk as many shots. So the wedge itself gives you multiple options depending on your lie, if you know how to use the wedge correctly. If you look at this wedge right here, grab your wedge, hold the shaft parallel, and you'll see the leading edge, and you'll see the back of the wedges below it. So there's your bounce. Well, there's a couple different things I can do to manipulate that. One right away is, if you open that face, you'll expose more bounce. That leading edge will actually rise up. So kind of a really important concept is, if I want to have more bounce, there's a couple things I can do. The easiest one is, you can just open that face just a little bit, and you're going to add more bounce to it. So another way that you can basically play with exposing more of the leading edge, which again is your knife that will dig, or adding more bounce, is shaft lean. So if I want to take bounce off a wedge and I want to kind of use that leading edge a little bit more, very simply, I can play with more shaft lean and get my hands more forward. That's taken off some of the bounce, and that leading edge is exposed. It's going to be engaging with the turf. I mean, it just took a little bit right out there. If I want to add more bounce to it with shaft lean, well, I can get the shaft more parallel. I've added more bounce that way. And here's an easy drill that I want you just to practice, just to get comfortable with if you're not used to bounce. Take your wedge, open the face just a teeny bit, okay? Take two hands on it, and I want you just to skim the ground. And I want you to feel like this does not want to dig. You'll feel it, it's just bouncing off the ground. That's your bounce. And then go ahead and close that face down. So you're now exposing the leading edge, and try the same thing. See what it does? So you want to be able to hit both those. They just both have a different purpose, and as long as you're aware of it, well, then you can go about hitting better shots and kind of learning how to play your game with it. Not a usual scenario in late June Arizona, but this ground's wet and it's cloudy and drizzling a little bit on me, which is awesome. So normally this is hard pan, so I'm gonna hit this little chip. I got a sand wedge here, but I'll get my hands forward, kind of like a normal, like the way I would set up for this chip in hot summertime. That leading edge is definitely exposed, and I'll have to be careful because this will want to dig. Like if I just touch the ground, it's wet right now. That was a good chip, but yeah, grab a little bit of ground there. So like when you expose that leading edge, the main thing to know is what you're doing, and you got to be careful. Like if I've got my hands forward with shaft lean, I've exposed that leading edge. Well, be aware, and now I'm brushing that grass. Like I'm not getting steep and attacking it. So the opposite of that is like, okay, this is wet conditions, and so maybe a little bit of bounce isn't a bad thing. Well, I could do a couple things. I could get that shaft more parallel. That'll add some bounce to it, but it's kind of difficult to hit chips with a shaft upright. Like usually you're gonna want a little bit of forward lean so you can load that club and release it. So another way again that you can add bounce, remember, is I can open that club face. Not a ton, like you don't need to go like you're hitting a flop shot. Like literally just turn that face just a teeny bit and then grip it. Now you've added a little bit more bounce. So like right here, it's kind of wet. So if that's square, just adding a little bit of bounce. And then I'm back to a little bit of a forward lean. And you can see that ball just pops right up, but also there's almost no ground impact here. Right here, even brushing it took a bit of grass and took some dirt with it. That one there just skipped right off. Okay, so let's put what we just talked about in practice. So this is the fun one. We have, I mean, this is a horrible lie because normally this would just be really tight lie and hard pan. And so what have we learned? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna expose a lot of bounce. I'm gonna think about using that leading edge because I don't want the club to bounce up into it. So this is wet though, because I don't know why in the end of June we have a wet course, but it's awesome. So you got options, right? Like this is what good chipping is. Looking at the lie and knowing what shot, club, and type you can hit that's gonna help you have the best miss time. So for this, I could take a 56, possibly, but I don't know if I really like that because I want this ball to roll. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, this is wet and super thin lie. It'd be really easy to mess this up. I'm gonna take a 50. I'm just gonna go ahead and think about that leading edge, and I'm thinking about brushing the ground. So I'm gonna be very careful because I know I'm using the leading edge, so I'm not gonna get steep and down and attack at it, because if I use the leading edge that way, it's bad. Let's hit some shots. Oh, that came out good. Okay, so that turned out really well. I would take that shot all day, but I knew what I wanted to do. With this lie, I knew that it was so thin, I was gonna use the leading edge as the main thought process, so I needed to be shallow and not get aggressive with it. I'll go ahead and just to show it, like, I'll take a 56, I'll open the face a little bit and I'll use some bounce. I really hope I don't hit one of those kids back there because I would feel absolutely horrible. This is not the shot I would play on the course because to me there's too much that can go wrong with this. Like, it shouldn't dig per se, but this lie is so thin, opening the face and doing all of that just seems like a bunch of risk for nothing. That turned out all right. Tons of spin. Okay, so they're both turned out decent. I can tell you which one scared me more, and on the course, I'm always thinking about, like, how can I have good misses, because I miss more shots than I hit perfect by almost all of them. So to me, it's factoring that in. When I miss hit, it's gonna give me the best result. And to me, on this, it was using the leading edge, keeping it simple, and just letting it go. Okay, so here we've got, again, its course is a little bit wet, which is awesome. Little downhill. The lie, it's sitting up, a little fluffy. So it's a little bit more forgiving of a lie, obviously. Like, I can get away with a little bit, but it is a little bit wet and soft. So I took a sand wedge here, and I'm opening the face a tiny bit. I'm just giving it a teeny bit more bounce because it's a little bit more of a safety net in case it wants to dig or anything like that. And you could hear how crisp and clean that comes out because it just bounces off nice and good. So knowing how to use and when to use the leading edge versus the bounce will make all the world a difference in terms of your chipping success.